Hello, my name is Larry Dobrow, and I'm thrilled to welcome you today to the Solli and PatientPoint webinar. In it, we're going to provide a State of the Union for the point of care channel, and for the first time, share some of the results from the inaugural Solli PatientPoint point of care survey. We'll be publishing our full report based on the survey, which is called The Continuing Evolution of the Point of Care Channel. The results are eye-opening, and they paint a picture of a channel that continues to build on its recent successes. Before we get into it, though, I'd like to turn it over to our three incredible panelists, Alyssa, Christine, and Stephanie, to introduce themselves. Alyssa, why don't you start us off?
Hello. Thank you so much, Larry, for the opening. My name is Alyssa Guerra. I'm Executive Vice President with PatientPoint. And immediately prior to PatientPoint, I worked at a company called Athena Health with EHR. And they also own Hippocrates, which is a mobile app also based in the point of care space. So I've dedicated approximately the last 15 years of my life to the point of care industry.
My name is Christine Wormilly. I'm Vice President of our Engagement Strategy team here at CMI Media Group. I've personally been at CMI Media Group for a little over 6.5 years, but I've been in the industry for a little over 18 years. But I'm also, when I'm not focusing on engagement strategy for my clients, I'm also the lead for our Point of Care Center of Excellence at the agency. I'll hand it off to Stephanie.
Thank you so much. And thank you guys so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and excited to talk about this topic. My name is Stephanie Loiseau. I work as head of marketing for a large pharmaceutical company. I've been within industry for over 15 years. So I work on the client side, but I've worked all facets of the commercial organization, from sales to marketing. Have also been a patient. So I'm really excited to talk about this topic because I'll be able to show things from various perspectives.
Thank you so much. And let's dive right in. The first question is probably one of the most broad things I could possibly ask you. How would you characterize the current state of point of care media within pharma marketing? Melissa, why don't you kick us off?
Absolutely. And broad, really broad. Thanks for that, Larry. So, hot, trending, critical, relevant. Uh, it's the talk of the town right now. So as an industry, we surpassed the $1 billion mark this year as represented by Point of Care Marketing Association marketers. And there's a reason for that. It's always crucial care, right? You're educating and empowering patients, and you're helping physicians so that we can kind of close the gap to diagnosis. The reason I think it's even bigger and growing right now is with all of the things going on with the environment in healthcare and what pharmaceutical manufacturers are being tasked with and faced with, it's a very safe place for their message to be. It's safe, it's audited, it's credible, and you have an expert, the healthcare professional, right there to address questions.
Add on to that as well, just from a marketing standpoint. As I mentioned, I've been in the industry for over 15 years. And as a marketer, I've seen point of care really mature and really grow. It's no longer a pilot program or a side tactic. I think it's something that was here to stay. It's also something that is a core conversion piece. And Alyssa, exactly what you said with really being able to target the HCP and the patient right at conversion, which is what we're looking for as marketers. So I think the current state of it is something that if you're not doing it as a marketer, you really are missing out with being able to reach healthcare providers and patients.
All right. Let's move on to another question. Per the survey, 94% of respondents use point of care media, but the median budget allocation is just 5%. Christine, why do you think point of care isn't getting a bigger piece of the overall budget pie?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's a question the entire industry has been asking for a very long time, in full honesty. I think that point of care isn't looked at as an essential channel by many different clients. I think some clients have it figured out and really understand the true impact and value it can bring to a marketing strategy. But I think it's easy to look at what's measurable definitively. Now, not that point of care isn't measurable, but paid search, programmatic display, direct display, they know that can be measured and attributed to, a visit to a website for example. So I think that because that measurement is in some ways easier to identify and guarantee, there's a little bit of comfort in knowing that, like the whole mentality of a patient or a physician going directly on to Google to search for a pharmaceutical product and knowing that you have to sponsor your message to appear right at the top of the search results. Sometimes SEO doesn't just cut it, right? I think that that's what is looked at as essential. And then point of care is also looked as expensive. We know there's higher minimum requirements, a lot of that attributed to just, the research that's needed to say it measured and performed well. And I think that as an industry, those are all things that we're trying to figure out, particularly with the Point of Care Marketing Association currently.
Stephanie, what do you think are some of the most powerful arguments for point of care getting that bigger piece of the pie? And what are some of the challenges? What are some of the challenges slowing further adoption?
Well, exactly, what we've heard is that it's right where the HCP and the patient are having these clinical conversations. It puts the brands into those conversations. Another thing that I would say is that, HCPs are making treatment decisions, and there's so many different things that they have to consider. And so for point of care, it's just a no-brainer to be able to do it. I think it's something that's a really tactical, important tactic in order to be able to implement. The one thing that I will say is that it does take a few months to show lift, to show impact. And I think that's what, for marketers, holds them back. That the vendor landscape can feel fragmented, and, marketers want to be able to show impact right away. And that's where adoption has slowed down, and why, more marketers aren't giving it more of their budget.
Yeah, I think that's a great, Stephanie and Christine, both of you. Stephanie, on that point with the measure, it's highly measurable. Which is great, right? You can do script lift. To do a script lift study, you want at least 6 months worth of data. And then the way, getting claims from the players in the space, getting scripts and claims, and that analysis takes about another month, 2 months. So there is that time on channel, very measurable. The great news is once people see that, and we all the players in the space can show case studies and history of evolution. Once they see that buying behavior trends upward. But that length of time, I think that's an important point.
And echo in that too. I mean, I think that that's part of the challenge, right? I think a lot of marketers want instant results, but the reality is point of care isn't as instant as just, click through to a website, right? Alyssa, I think you said it perfectly. I think that it's just a matter of trying to educate those who are considering point of care that you do need that time in market, and to, at least front that investment, and it will pay off with your ROI analysis long term.
Yeah. The proximity value is so high that, when you see most people are looking at it, or most people are doing it now, most of the manufacturers, because they get the value that's the closest point, right? It totally makes sense. Marketers, obviously, and agencies, they're all faced with garnering budgets and making decisions on where do those budgets go. And when you're getting, daily or monthly feedback in cases of, click through and interactions, it's kind of like, okay, I know exactly what's going on when you're waiting for it. So it's an area to be, to have dedication in, and that we're all working together, all the players in the space, to continue to bring that education as to that value.
I think one of the things that's come through in our answers so far is the expansive nature of point of care. It's no longer point of care, just the office. It's points of care. It's pharmacies. There's so many other venues for it. And it reaches patients and it reaches HCPs in the same physical environment. So I guess the question I have for you, Christine, is how should marketers think about balancing messaging for these two audiences? Is that simultaneous reach one of the channel's kind of secret weapons?
Yeah, I actually think more marketers should be doing this and thinking about HCP and DTC point of care working hand in hand and being in market simultaneously. And I think it's easy to go, oh, it's very expensive, I'm just going to prioritize DTC point of care. The reality is, if you aren't at point of care targeting that physician right before they meet with that patient at point of care, it's not going to correlate and perform as well. We have proven case studies. I know Alyssa and her team could certainly follow up for those interested and share this. But DTC and HCP work so well together. Your ROI could be almost double, if not triple, versus doing siloed HCP and DTC campaigns by themselves. So the reality is, you want to communicate the same message, if whether it's about efficacy, adherence to a product, copay cards, whatever that may be, to both audiences, to make sure you're both, if you're promoting a drug, the physician is sold through on why they should prescribe that product to their patient, and the patient, when they're meeting with the doctor, has the knowledge and confidence in what the product is and the familiarity, so that way when the physician prescribes it, they are more likely to, agree or, ask for it at that experience when they're, making their treatment decisions.
Yeah, I agree. Just on top of that, I would say it's probably its biggest strength and its biggest asset. The fact that you're able to message both HCPs and patients at the same time. Patients, they go in, they come into the doctor's office, they want reassurance, they want confidence in whatever it is that they're prescribed. HCPs, they want that clinical value, in regards to the medication. So if it's something that's coordinated and aligned, it can absolutely help that conversation that the patient and the HCP is having. You have a lot more educated patients now that are coming into the office. They're asking questions. And so I just think that to be able to message both at the same time and having that balance, it does not have to be the same exact messaging, but just aligned and coordinated. And we'll see really effective conversations that are happening between the HCP and the patient.
We talked about measurement a little bit earlier. So this is a question for you, Alyssa. In the survey report, one executive said there's no common currency for point of care data. What needs to be done in your mind in order to improve and standardize measurement?
Wow, I'm getting the really good ones, Larry. I appreciate I appreciate that. I actually love that question, and I appreciate that question because we did talk a lot about measurement, and point of care is highly measurable. So I do want to say that. Now, different partners may do it differently. And that's where they're talking about the common currency. In addition to that, sometimes it's typically done by third parties, all the measurement companies out there, Symphony, IQVIA, Crossix, ZS, I could name them all. And then marketers and marketing manufacturing companies also may have their own internal analytics that they put into a marketing mix model. When you do a marketing mix model for point of care, you need to do it differently to attune to it. So it's a very, very high value. You're already at that closest proximity point. It's going to be very, very different than the highly scalable kind of variable. It's typically a very flat buy. It's typically for a long period of time. And we need to identify, like, what are those things that we all need to do to input. So right now I can say with the Point of Care Marketing Association, there's actually a recent paper that went out, point of view that went out. It's on LinkedIn, or you can go to the site and get it. And it delves into the best way for point of care to show up in the marketing mix model. And then all of the data endpoints would need to be the same for all the players. The other thing that the association is doing is identifying exactly what those data points are. So that's going to be coming out in 2026 to help address that question. And I thank the person that raised that, because there's definitely a focus on that for 2026.
Stephanie, you're on the client side. For marketers like yourself who are evaluating whether point of care makes sense for their brand, what's the decision framework? What questions should they be asking before they commit budget?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's a few things that people need to consider before even thinking about if this is something that they want to consider. Number one, is it a condition that's actively discussed? That's something that's really important. Working in dermatology, I've worked with acne. That is one of the largest conditions within dermatology. So that's something that's really important. Working in women's health, working in the birth control space, that was something that was actively discussed. So it's a no-brainer to be able to do that. So I think that's something first that needs to be thought about. What do we want the patient or the HCP to do? What action is it that we're looking for them to take? Are we looking for the patient to actively ask the doctor for the product? Are we looking for them to ask for more information on the condition? So that's something that is important. What action is it that you want them to take? What gap also are you looking to fill from a conversion standpoint? We know that this is right there at the conversion spot. So what gap do we have in the other tactics that we're doing that point of care can potentially fill. And then lastly, what does success look like? I think it's important to be able to measure success early on. What are those KPIs that you're looking to be able to have? What does good look like at the end of these programs? If those are questions that you can answer and it makes sense for your brand, to me, this is why I think point of care, it makes sense to be able to do that. But again, it's important to have those framework and to have those considerations before going in and jumping into these tactics.
Christine, a question for you about content. How do you think marketers should approach content strategy in and around the point of care space? What works? What doesn't work as well?
Yeah. I mean, first step is just having a piece of your marketing budget to support point of care. It sounds so simple, but it's true. Just being open minded to having some of your budget tested. I think, Alyssa mentioned, a lot of clients are doing point of care, but there definitely are a lot of smaller clients who budgets are lean. There's skepticism of entering the point of care, landscape and will it work? I need to make my budget work. It's very tight. So just being open minded and understanding there's true value to being in point of care and having that as part of your media mix is the first step. The second step is once you identify what your goals and objectives are, bringing those goals and objectives direct to our point of care supplier partners and having those proactive conversations well before in-depth proposals and plans are built, because I think that and Alyssa can attest to this, I'm sure, but the industry doesn't always get the full transparency of what the key goals and key KPIs are for any client campaign at all times. No, I know Stephanie is obviously very transparent with what she does from a marketing perspective, which is fantastic, but not all marketers in the space are. So, as agency partners and marketers and on the client side, I would just ask everyone who's considering entering point of care to be proactive, knowledge share, have kickoff calls, establish goals and KPIs well in advance. That way we can figure out what are some of the best point of care tactics to explore, where you may position an adherence message and how you position it in office to the patient, to the doctor may completely vary from, a copay card message. And it also depends on where the product is at in its life cycle as well. So I'd say that everything truly works. It's just a matter of getting it to work based on your strategic imperatives and goals and objectives.
Yeah, I'll add on to that as well. I think you make a really good point, Christine. I think having the right strategy in mind is going to be something that is important. I would say singular strategy focus is something as well that's important. You can't try to do all things within point of care. So I would say being singular focus, whether that's wanting to drive awareness, whether that's wanting to give a copay card message, whether that's also wanting to, have the patient adhere to the medication, having that singular focus from a content standpoint is going to be really important. Simplicity, I would say, is something that's important as well. We are not looking to do mental gymnastics when a patient is in an office or when an HCP are having these conversations. So I think being very simple, concise, strategically knowing what you want to do. And I love the fact that you said, where is your brand at within the life cycle? That's absolutely going to change the content from brand to brand. So I think those things are important to be able to consider.
Oh my gosh, I have so many things to add. You guys are
Animal,
amazing.
animal.
Yeah, you brought up so many relevant points. Plan earlier. If there's one ask I would say from our industry, we have a lot of expertise and experience. Uh, I can say in our company, for instance, we do over 600 measurements a year. We know exactly which offices are performing, HCPs are performing, where to go, what type of content resonates. So utilize that expertise earlier. Uh, Even if you don't, you can do it throughout the campaign. I love, Stephanie, you said simplify, keep it simple. Remember that the message is in that close conversion and there's a medical expert in the room. Very different from what you're doing when somebody's in a living room or at a sporting event or somewhere else. They're much farther. You may need to be more dramatic. You may need to have, when you're there with a doctor, ask your doctor now. It could be like the smallest tweak of a word. You're right here. You're in that moment. What are the 1, 2, 3 things you want that patient to know right before they go into the doctor's office because they're there? So it's really kind of putting that contextual marketing aspect hat on and spending time with your partners, because each of them will have expertise, like an EHR partner, a telehealth partner, a pharmacy partner, and the in-office partners. They're going to give you like a little bit of information that can resonate in that space. Definitely do it early. Think about where you want to go with the journey based on the life cycle. You both mentioned that. Disease state education and awareness. A lot of people aren't taking advantage of that. Where is it better than in that space to start to put that out before your brand comes to market? So I think that's a really great opportunity. Some marketers are taking great advantage of that. And especially with more of the rare diseases coming out, the targeted oncology therapies, that type of thing, you want to start to educate people before that your brand or treatment comes to market.
I'll add on to that as well. The one thing I will say, I think that's important, and I love that you said that. I mean, you do over 600 measurements per year. So I think what's going to be important is whatever vendor it is that you're working with you, bring them into the fold of your brand. I think that's something that's really important. Take them behind the curtains as far as what are some of the strategic initiatives that you have, the strategic imperatives, but what are also the challenges that you're experiencing? Because, you may be able to offer me insight into what are some of those things that I need to be able to message that has been successful, that you've seen work with other brands. So I think it's really important that it's not a transactional relationship, but that you see them as an extension really of your team, bringing them into the fold. I think that's what's going to be really important for setting you up for success. And so I love that you said bring it in early as well, because that's you're able to plan together versus just dictating this is what I want to do. So as marketers, I think there's a lot that we can learn from, our partners.
All right. I'd like to throw one more figure out from the survey report and then have one last question that all three of you would great if you could weigh in on. Per the report, 61% of respondents said they expect to increase point of care spending in the next 12 months. What are the most critical actions marketers and vendors need to take to make this happen, to unlock all the value, to make sure everybody is on board with this channel as it grows? What's next? If we're having this conversation again a year from now, how do the three of you think we'll be talking about the point of care space?
I can start from a marketing standpoint. I think something where I see it going, I mean, just more continued innovation, more digital, more telehealth, more pharmacy, at home moments, not just screens in the waiting room. So I think that's going to be something that's going to be really important and where we'll see things going. Cleaner data, more consistent measurement. That's something also that I think that's going to get even better with time. The other thing that I would say is that from a marketing standpoint, we need to stop making the amount of times I've heard marketers making this as a pilot program. This is not something that should be considered as a pilot program, but really something that is essential in bringing that full omni-channel approach and ensuring that the patients and the HCPs are getting the message. So I see more investment in this from a marketing standpoint, more innovation that's happening from our partners, better data. And so I think that point of care is just going to continue to grow and to be more of an essential within our tactics that we're doing from a marketing standpoint.
So it's so interesting about we spend a lot of time, right, thinking about innovation and where it's going next, because you want to think 3, 5, 10 years down the road. There's a recent Mars study, in addition to the Solli study that was done. 82% of people, and I call them consumers because we're consumers before we're patients. Nobody wants to go around and be thought of as like, I'm a patient. I'm very impatient. So I think, 82% are still going into the doctor's office. However, they're also exposed and utilizing telehealth. They're also exposed to going to the pharmacy. They're also, Stephanie, those connectivity points as part of going to the office, you're also going to be going in your patient portal, right? You're going to check in. So it's that connectivity and meeting early and bringing your partners in early and together can help with that connectivity. So I think we're going to see more connectivity among those pieces in the future. You're going to see more of that kind of merging together and having different players work together and or consolidate and merge to make that communication with consumers that become patients with their caregivers and kind of tying all of that together and then tying those data points together so that we can collectively give a much sharper image of what that patient and caregiver and HCP journey is like for different therapeutic areas. I'm very excited about it.
And I think that's important to remember. Point of care, the definition of point of care is evolving every day. I think it blows my mind what falls under the category of point of care now versus even a year ago. So there are constantly new opportunities to grow and innovate in the space. We've seen a lot of the expansion within EHR recently. The HL7 integrators within the EHR, landscape have just exploded over the last year or two. And that is all being, by some clients bucketed under point of care. Others have EHR as a separate channel. So it really does depend on the overall strategy. And to Alyssa's point, we also do have to be thinking about where is point of care happening? Point of care isn't always physically at the office. It is often at the pharmacy. It's at the urgent cares. It's these treatment decisions are being made at all different places where care is given to a patient or a doctor is giving care virtually through telehealth. So I think that innovation is essential in this business. You have to constantly be willing to try and test something new. And then, yes, you may be gambling on the results, but the reality is many partners in this space will work with you to include added value measurement studies or build them into larger packages just to validate success because a true partner wants any marketing brand to be successful long term for not only you, but for them themselves too, to have you as a case study. So the reality is we're all in this together. It's important to innovate and try anything new in the space if you have the budget, or at least a piece of your budget if your budget's leaner, just so you can continue to help grow and, evolve the industry.
And something you said, Christine, sort of triggered another point in the care. So while the majority of people are still going physically into an office, I don't see that shifting. Like we've been talking about that shifting for 5 years, ever since, during COVID and everything. There are just so many things you have to physically be in front of. Stephanie, earlier you mentioned acne, and while you can have some ongoing touch points, you physically need to see that close up. Like you need to see how it's showing up and things like that, and where a patient is in a stage. So that's really important. But one of the things, like if you're in a sandwich generation, everybody knows where that is, where you're taking care of parents and you have children, you're in the patient portal. I've managed for my family multiple patient portals, because it's so fragmented. That's another big piece of that puzzle where you're engaged. You need to be in there, having a good experience while you're in there, being able to get information while you're trying to manage that is another piece. So it's like thinking of all the potential touch points and utilizing your budget as effectively as possible to integrate those. And I do think, I think you're going to see a lot more integration.
Yeah. And you just made me think of one thing to add on to everything I said. So thanks for Alyssa for those
I
great
love when that
thoughts.
happens.
I love it. I love it. It's great. I will say that it's a lot of this comes back to what can you do moving forward? Empathy. Having empathy in your messaging toward the patients, toward the physicians who are overworked and there's a shortage and they're already burnt out. And we know this is going to be a continued problem as we head, through the future. So I think that empathy in your message and connecting to the doctors, to the patients at the right place in the right moment is critical.
This was a wonderful discussion, and I think everybody is aware of the expansiveness of the point of care space. I think everybody is aware of the opportunities, but the three of you put this into such clear context. Thank you so much for your time and for being a part of this.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Look out for our Solli PatientPoint point of care survey report, the continuing evolution of the point of care channels. And thanks so much for joining us today.